For some people, it takes a while to tell that something is great. For others, it takes seeing the entire picture. For me, it only took this cutscene. For some reason, I just had a feeling that these characters and this story had what it took to be truly great. It even had the potential to redeem ZZZ and pave the way for an amazing story moving forward. It was at this moment I decided to put all of my faith into the Angels of Delusion to save the story. And how did they do? This is the story of how the Angels of Delusion became the best faction in ZZZ. While I may or may not have exaggerated some of the details, that intro truly does reflect my feelings I had about ZZZ's story at the time. Quite honestly, before 2.6, I was really disappointed in the direction it was going. While the game's siblings got done telling some of my favorite story arcs to ever come out of Hoyo, I was disappointed by how weak Season 2's story ended up. What made it hurt even more is that certain aspects like the moral grayness found within Top's division, a villain such as Azolda, and very specific character moments showed that the writing team clearly has the potential to tell a great story. But for one reason or another, they half-assed a lot of plot elements. The story felt very incohesive, and the writing was redundant at multiple parts, leading to a story that failed to live up to its full potential. It was because of this failure that my expectations for ZZZ from a storytelling perspective were at rock bottom, which pains me to say because I once valued the story as an integral reason for why I played the game. It was one of the reasons why I felt like ZZZ was my favorite gacha game. It was then I saw this cutscene. The expressiveness and visual storytelling told me everything I needed to know about these characters and their relationships before we even got to interact with them ourselves. I can tell that Suna gets teased by Nangong, and despite seeming cowardly, she won't let herself become a doormat. I can tell that Arya tries her best to adapt to the chaos of the group, yet is easy to overwhelm at times. As for Nangong, she's just a gremlin. Being able to gather this much with a few words being said, paired with the cartoonish levels of whimsy in the cutscene, soundtrack, and sound effects, already set the general mood for the story. There was a certain warmness to the cutscene, the same type of emotion I felt when experiencing ZZZ's early story. In my opinion, ZZZ's biggest strength is in its characters. The game's smaller scale compared to its siblings allows for the story to focus on individual characters on a more intimate level, and when it comes to the Angels of Delusion, they nail this aspect perfectly. For Suna, I think the cutscene that perfectly represents her character is the moment she is forced onto stage and begins to sing on the spot.
Give it up for the Angels of Delusion component!
Just let me leave the notes, I'll pass your plate. Color the songs where dreams have stayed. You will feel it when every gentle chord rings out and fades away. Don't share and fake, that's our heart to blaze. Waves of thought run free, flowing endlessly. Born from love, our melody.
At first, the singing is awkward and her self-consciousness is evident. It is clear that she is terrified and can barely get her words out. But then, she eventually grows more and more comfortable, eventually finding the courage to put her heart and soul into the song. Suna's my favorite member of Angels of Delusion, mostly because she has the most lines that get a good chuckle out of me. Nangong teases her a lot, and she's oversensitive. She tends to overthink a lot, which feeds into her self-consciousness, leading to a lot of whining, crying, and a whole lot of self-deprecation. Even with all of these doubts, I wouldn't call Suna a weak person. When push comes to shove, Suna is able to stand her ground. When it comes to Nangong, as seen in the intro clip, it's not as if she sits there and takes it, and even with all of her self-doubt, she never uses it as an excuse to give up, but rather tries to improve herself. One of my favorite lines from Suna is when she says, if she's going down, everyone else is going down with her, showing that while on the surface she's the most frail member of the group, she's also capable of saying some of the most wild shit. This line also shows how close she is with Arya and Nangong by stating that no matter what happens, they will be with each other no matter what. Arya is the de facto main character of this story, and while I do have some issues with her character arc, which I will bring up later, I still appreciate what her character brings to the table, and the story just wouldn't be the same without her. The two words I would use to describe Arya is that she is both sincere and naive. After being awoken by Cersei's song, Arya had a desire to share her own voice with the rest of New Eridu, despite the fact that she was a former war machine. She had a pure intention, but her lack of experience of the world outside of fighting made her overly reliant on her wishing sprite, trusting it without any reservations. Naively believing that the wishing sprite could solve all her problems, when it was taken over by the evil AI yokai, her self-consciousness about the fact that she's a former weapon of war, and doubts if she even has the right to enjoy her brand new life as an idol, were exploited. But her strong desire to make her voice heard, and the love she has for her friends, is what compels her to push towards the future rather than be swallowed by the past. Other than that important bit, I also just find it cute that she short-circuits when unable to follow the direction of a conversation, subtly reminding the audience that she is in fact an intelligent construct. Finally, there's the leader, Nangong, and on the surface, she seems to be the most simple out of the three. She serves as the leader of the Angels of Delusion and likes to mess with other members as much as she can, mostly Suna. But underneath the facade, Nangong is actually a very competent leader, and while under the guise of teasing, she does a good job of pushing her friends forward. The cutscene where Suna is forced onto stage is an example of this, as I believe that Nangong knows Suna's true potential. Therefore, by throwing her up on stage, she's forcing Suna to get more comfortable with performing, makes Suna's talent more well known to the public, and as the cherry on top, this act became a great promotion for their show. This, along with her winning the lottery as a discreet way to provide funds for the group, show that Nangong is actually putting in a lot of work for the group despite her carefree attitude. This facade comes off when Arya goes berserk and Jane is about to take her away. In this scene, Nangong gets riled up and fights tooth and nail, arguing to make sure that her friend doesn't get taken. I think what makes Nangong great is that despite being the leader of the group, her contribution to the story is more subtle and in the background, but still has a notable impact. As individuals, I like each member of Angels of Delusion for different reasons, but the most important part is that they work as a unit. While having a likable character is great, a lot of potential is lost if they don't have good character interactions. Good character interactions make characters feel more believable and realistic, like they exist and live their lives off-screen. An audience should be able to guess how characters are able to interact with each other, based on the scenarios already shown in the story. And in my opinion, the Angels of Delusion do this very well, as other than the big examples I gave when appraising each of the characters individually, there is so much banter packed into the dialogue between this trio, I felt as if there was never a dull moment when these characters were on screen. And seeing how well the angels interacted with each other made me invested in the story. I actually cared about what happened to them, and was genuinely concerned during parts where the group ran into issues. The biggest example why this became important to the story is the moment where Suna and Nangong reach out to Arya while she's shut down. On paper, this scene is extremely corny. What it boils down to is a character succumbing to their self-doubts with questionable events leading to the shutdown, part of my later complaints, and overcoming it with the power of friendship. And quite honestly, if the game didn't do a good job of establishing the relationship between Arya and her teammates, I would have been rolling my eyes. But, as stated earlier, because I care about these characters, both individually and as a group, I found this moment to be heartwarming, especially when the game began to show flashbacks to when this group began forming and the early stages of their relationship. The good character writing turned a corny moment into an excellent one, and shows the importance of gaining audience investment. Even when looking at characters not part of this faction, we get really good character interactions from already existing characters in the game. For example, the presence of Jane in this story was a nice treat, and seeing her attitude change drastically depending on the situation was nice to see. I liked how when Arya was going berserk, Jane had to step in and be stern, and while arguing with Nangong and Suna, it was clear that Jane felt bad and could understand why the other two were upset. She knew she had a duty to uphold though, and only relented due to orders from a higher up. When the situation resolved, we see Jane treating the trio with a lot more warmth, as we once again see Jane in a carefree state. In this section of the game, Jane's double agent nature is reinforced as we see how Jane's personality adapts to the situation. Yet, even when changing her persona, one can tell she still maintains her conscience. Another great moment comes from another NEPS member, Seth, and his newly introduced brother, Severian. Before we see how the brothers interact with each other, Severian comes off as a very serious character that takes his work seriously, even willing to work off the books and act underhandedly in order to get the job done. I thought the presence of Severian was interesting, but knowing that he was Seth's older brother and had been referenced in the past, I was anticipating what kind of dynamic the two brothers had. When talking to each other, it was very clear that there is a lot of distance between the two siblings, and it seems as if neither were really jazzed to see each other. Severian reveals that Seth had begged him to spend Gilded Carrot Day with the family, and he believes Seth is just trying to find a way to ditch. Despite this, there is an implication that Severian purposely changed the schedule for Seth so that he could prepare a surprise for the holiday. It is very clear that the two brothers do in fact care for each other, yet they don't have any trust. This scene establishes a dynamic, familial relationship that builds upon already established characters, while giving us a reason to care about the one that was recently introduced. Another example of effective character interaction. The final notable interaction is Fairy's presence in the story, as she actually has a dynamic with Arya. While it's not that complicated, it's nice to see that in the past, Fairy acted as a mentor figure for Arya and helped guide her before she became part of the Angels of Delusion. It's another side of Fairy that wasn't seen before, and once again this character dynamic between her and Arya gives more substance to Arya, while also expanding on Fairy's character. But that being said, there seems to be an elephant in the room.
Installation complete. I'm Yokai. Pleased to meet you.
For my last compliment of the story, we have the villain Yokai, and so far, I'm down with whatever they're cooking up with him. Quite honestly, I wasn't really expecting much from the little teaser we got at the end of the last story mission, but hearing bits and pieces of him messing with New Eridu before eventually taking over our office was enough to solidify this guy as a threat. I also enjoy the fact that he's a complete bastard, claiming superiority over humans, insulting us directly, and seems to focus on Fairy specifically, implying some sort of connection between the two, which I'm looking forward to. This, paired with his ability to manipulate Arya and Vesper by exploiting seemingly small insecurities, really makes Yokai feel like a force to be reckoned with. While they can still fumble his presence in the story, the game managed to make a villain that feels like he should be stopped for both moral and personal reasons, which is a huge step up from villains that I honestly couldn't give two shits about due to their boring personalities. While I really enjoyed the story, it would be very disingenuous to claim that it was flawless. The main problem with the story is that two of the main conflicts were very half-assed. More specifically, the conflict between Cersei and Arya, and Vesper. When it comes to the conflict between Cersei and Arya, and how Cersei hid her identity from Arya after she retired, my issue is that they introduced the conflict too soon and resolved it too quickly. First off, while throughout the story we get glimpses of the relationship Cersei has with the Angels of Delusion as their teacher, it never really feels in depth, as at most we get pep talks and the like. I just don't feel the connection was built up enough to justify making it a rift between her and Arya as a major plot point. What adds to this problem is that the conflict is resolved too quickly, as after Arya regains her senses, the two seem to make up immediately. Now in the story, the conflict itself is explained to be made worse due to Yokai's influence on Arya and Cersei's PTSD, so while the storytelling is consistent, I still can't forgive the pacing of it, because the story never gave me a reason to care about this conflict in the first place. Therefore, wasting my time with it, then having the audacity to throw it away after 2 seconds, really rubbed me the wrong way. And the worst part about this is that they do it a second time with Vesper, as the kind of twist villain of the story. While it was believable that she could be influenced by Yokai, considering she seemed hesitant about covering for Cersei for Gilded Carrot Day, I felt like they rushed the plot point about her abuse at Tops being the reason why she's working with Yokai. What would make this more effective is we got more scenes with Vesper, as we barely see her interact with the Angels of Delusion. And while it was sweet that she came to see their show and even hug Arya after she got better, there just isn't enough reason to be invested in her character, as this is only one notable interaction. Again, if they just worked harder to make Vesper a more important character, then this twist would have been more effective. And the part that pisses me off the most is the fact that after being defeated, she immediately goes back to being on the side of good again. Mind you, all of this takes place over the course of less than 10 minutes, so I have to wonder, what was the point of making her a villain if it was this easy to change her mind? Honestly, both of these conflicts felt very cheap, and are quite baffling considering most of the other characters were built up excellently. These half-assed plot points were some of the worst parts about Season 2's story, and I'm honestly quite disappointed that the ZZZ writing team still struggled to add proper conflict into the story. Despite these two glaring issues, I was able to overlook them for the most part because of how much fun I was having with the story. While ZZZ's weaknesses are still ever present, they pale in comparison to how well the writing team utilized their character-focused writing to tell the story. Again, while the story isn't perfect, I feel like this time around, the writing team truly showed what they were capable of. For the past few patches, I felt like the writing team had components of a good story, but kept on implementing them in the worst ways time and time again. So, seeing a simple patch with low stakes, yet is carried by great characters, and even better character interactions, re-sparked the fun I used to have in experiencing ZZZ. My only hope is that this story isn't the peak, but rather a starting line. As it stands, while I really enjoyed the story, this quality of storytelling feels like the writing team of ZZZ just caught up with the other series. Despite this, I still believe due to its unique setting, ZZZ has the highest potential out of all of Hoya's games, and the Angels of Delusion showed it was possible. That is why I think the Angels of Delusion are currently the best faction in the game, not only because I like them as characters, but for what they represent. The Angels of Delusion are a sign of how great ZZZ's storytelling can be, and they are a light that the story needed to keep pushing forward. Thank you, Angels of Delusion, for bringing back my faith into this game's story. Hopefully, this faith isn't just a delusion.